It's hard to overstate how big this moment was for humanity. First contact with an interstellar species, and it happened here in our own solar system. But you know what? I was expecting something more dramatic. Maybe some weird radio signals, pulses, gamma ray bursts, a bunch of math that no human can decipher until suddenly, bam, there it is, a message delivered right into our orbit. It was both shocking and kind of boring. I mean, let's be real. If aliens really wanted to make first contact, they'd do it in a much cooler way than sending a text message. They would probably arrive in person and just park their spaceship right in the middle of New York City. We're all pretty disappointed, but also, why didn't they land in New York City? Instead, they landed in the middle of nowhere. They chose this remote desert region in Western Australia. NASA picked up the signal. A lot of people were involved. This thing became a huge deal because of how perfectly preserved it is. I mean, look at it. It's like a time capsule. Yeah, there's a little rust around the edges, but for the most part, it looks brand new. It just shows how pristine the whole site is. So yeah, it was pretty cool seeing all of these government officials show up. A few days after they found this thing, Bill Nelson, the NASA administrator, even went down to check it out. He didn't say anything too crazy. It was just, there's a lot of speculation about what this object might be, but the bottom line is, we don't know. We need to be cautious. What if this is some kind of biohazard? Scientists are concerned about contamination. Like I said, they want to preserve the site. Also, they don't know where the object came from. The thing could literally be from another world, which means there's some risk of contamination, and I get that. When I saw the video of these scientists walking up to the object, all of them wearing hazmat suits, I was kind of scared. They should have just put one guy in a hazmat suit and sent him in. They don't need a whole team. After a few weeks of investigating, the Australian government decided that they couldn't take care of this situation alone. They needed help. They reached out to some experts at the University of Sydney, who were able to identify the material the object is made out of. It's called metal organic framework. It's a type of metal lattice held together by carbon molecules. Think of it like a honeycomb. And yeah, it turns out that metal organic frameworks are actually super common here on Earth. These materials are lightweight and durable, so they're often used to filter things. You can find them in everything from gas masks to water filters. Scientists thought that this might be some kind of spacecraft filter, like maybe it helps the occupants breathe the air on other planets. But then they got to thinking, if this object has been sitting in the Australian desert for hundreds of years, if not thousands, why does it look brand new? There's no corrosion, there's no erosion. There's nothing that suggests that this thing has been outside. Yeah, that doesn't seem possible. In the end, they decided that this honeycomb material must have come from Earth. Yeah. This thing was a cast-off, some kind of junk that had gotten lost in the Australian outback. But where did it come from? They never figured that out. And that's a problem. I'm pretty sure that everyone in my audience has a metal detector somewhere in their house. If not, you can order one online. It's not difficult. But I bet that none of those metal detectors could pick up this object if they were placed next to it. Why? Because the material that it's made out of doesn't contain iron. Metal detectors rely on electromagnetism to detect metals. Basically, they shoot a magnetic field into the ground, and if a piece of metal is nearby, it will cause a shift in the magnetic field. The detector picks up the change and it beeps. Now, the strange thing about this honeycomb material is that it doesn't react to magnets. It's non-magnetic, which means that it's probably not pure iron. Scientists originally thought that it was aluminum, but it turns out that the material is actually 90% efficient at blocking magnetic fields. They call this metamaterial. It's made out of exotic matter that behaves in ways we can't explain. Yeah, it's not possible to figure out what this stuff is. Even if you had one in your house, you wouldn't know what to do with it. So yeah, this thing is kind of a mystery, but it's not really. Not if you know where to look. In 2013, A guy named Paul Hill published a paper about a supposed alien spacecraft in the Philippines. It looked kind of like this. Now, a lot of people have pointed out that this thing isn't round like a spaceship, but flat like a disc. Well, I disagree. To me, it looks exactly like a classic UFO, flying disc. But Mr. Hill had an explanation for this. He said that the reason the object looked flat was because it was covered in ice. He talked about how the shape was consistent with other known objects in the sky, including comets. And he explained how ice forms on these objects when they enter Earth's atmosphere. Now, when I read that, I was pretty skeptical. Comets don't move like spaceships. They don't travel in straight lines. They're erratic and unpredictable. Yeah, there's a difference. But there's a bigger problem. It's not possible for an icy comet to land in the middle of the desert and stay there for centuries. They either melt or they blow up. But Mr. Hill wasn't talking about ordinary comets. He was talking about something else, something much stranger. You see, Mr. Hill believed that this object wasn't just an ordinary comet. It was a hollow comet. The ice was hiding something bigger on the inside, something metallic. So yeah, the surface might be frozen solid, but underneath the surface, it's a different story. He thought that this object was an alien spaceship covered in ice. Now, I was skeptical at first. I mean, I didn't believe that comets could really be spaceships. But then I started looking into it, and it turns out that comets aren't just chunks of rock and dust. They're also full of organic compounds, molecules that contain carbon. And one of these molecules is called tholins. Tholins are the building blocks of life on Earth, and they've been found in comets. It's pretty much proof that Earth was seeded by comets. And if comets can deliver life, then they can deliver spaceships. I mean, there's really no difference. They're both just pieces of space junk. I guess it doesn't matter if this thing is a spaceship or a comet. Either way, it's solid proof that alien life exists. I knew I wouldn't be able to answer that question. Myra blinked, her throat dry. Of all the questions she'd anticipated, war, expansion, power, this wasn't one of them. Why do humans choose to suffer? She could have answered immediately. She could have quoted philosophy, biology, history. But that wasn't why she was here. This wasn't a test of facts. Ithkal didn't want statistics. It wanted truth. She took a breath and said, "Because suffering gives us meaning." The alien's glow dimmed slightly, not in anger, but in contemplation. Mira continued, stepping forward. Pain isn't something we enjoy. It's not sought for its own sake. But when we endure pain, willingly, for a purpose, it becomes a kind of transformation. It separates intention from accident. Love, sacrifice, loyalty. These are choices in spite of suffering. That's where we believe strength comes from. Ithkal was silent, the walls around them rippling faintly. You misunderstand us because you think suffering is a malfunction, Mira added. To us, it's the price of becoming more than what we were. Ow. The alien's tendrils quivered. But why not evolve past pain, as others have? Why not remove it entirely? Mira hesitated. Because without it, we don't learn the cost of our actions. Without it, we become ... cold. Hollow. She swallowed, remembering her brother's face. The way he smiled through a terminal illness. How he'd held her hand and whispered, "It's still worth it." I think suffering is what reminds us that we're alive. It's the fire that tempers us. Sometimes it breaks us, yes, but other times it forges something stronger. Ithkal's glow flickered rapidly. You are unlike any sentient we've encountered. Is that good or bad? Neither, Ithkal said. It is ... unprecedented. It turned, extending a thought path through the wall, revealing countless other rooms, each one housing data from species across the galaxy. Videos, thoughts, songs, cultures spanning millennia. Your world, it said, should not have reached this point. Statistically, you should have destroyed yourselves. the psychological patterns in your species are erratic, unstable, yet you survive. And worse. You inspire. Mira frowned. Inspire who? The alien dimmed its light to a soft, pulsating hue. Something like resignation. The others? The other what? The civilizations we monitor. Some have begun to mimic your ways. They watch your broadcasts, read your stories. They see your flaws and do not recoil. They see your defiance and feel drawn to it. Now Mira was truly confused. Wait, are you saying we're a bad influence? The being's skin changed to a hard, refracted sheen, like a barrier. You are an infection of narrative. That one hit her hard. I don't know what to say to that. You do not need to, Ithkel replied. You already asked your question. Mira froze. What question? The alien turned back to her. You asked, what right do you have to judge us? And then, after a long pause, it added, we are not judging you. At least, not anymore. No, now we are learning. And with that, the connection ended. So here's an excerpt from my current work in progress, which I am working on right now. Let me know what you think. The words struck Mira like a whisper of thunder. What right do you have to judge us? She hadn't said it, not with her mouth. But Ithkel was right. That question had lived behind her eyes, in the weight of her stance, the careful edge in every answer she'd given. And now it had been spoken aloud by the alien. Is that what this has all been about? Mira asked quietly. You showed up to warn us, to contain us. Because you're afraid we'll contaminate the galaxy with hope? Kel pulsed in a slow rhythm, unreadable. We do not fear hope, it said. We fear belief. Your kind believes in contradiction, in triumph despite failure, in sacrifice without reward, in love without certainty, in choice, in free will, even when logic says no. Mira stepped closer. And why is that a threat? Because others see it. And they begin to wonder. She was starting to understand now. The galaxy wasn't just watching humanity. It was listening, measuring, tempted, and wondering. She said slowly, leads to questioning. Yes, Ithkel said. And questioning leads to chaos. It moved toward a console, or perhaps a projection of memory, and a vision bloomed in the air between them. Alien worlds, sterile and silent. Civilizations with perfect peace, no war, no hunger. But also no music, no laughter, no grief. No art, no rebellion. Perfection had made them stagnant. Mira stared, stunned. You sterilized emotion. We optimized survival. And killed the soul in the process. For a moment, Ithkel said nothing. Then, we have begun to forget what soul even means. Mira's voice softened. That's why you watch us. That's why you haven't destroyed us, even though you easily could. You want to understand something you gave up long ago. The alien was very still. You are not what we expected, it finally said. Well, Mira smiled gently. We rarely are. Ithkel withdrew the projection. There is conflict among us now. The collective is divided. The other half, wonder if you are necessary. That word hung in the chamber like a knife. Necessary for what? Necessary for what? Mira asked, barely above a whisper. To remind the galaxy of choice, silence, heavy and sharp. You asked what gives you the right to judge us, Ithkel continued. Perhaps you are not wrong to ask. Mira's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't diplomacy anymore. This was revelation. We will return to our council, Ithkel said. We will present what we have learned, what you have shown us. But the outcome is not certain. Some among us still believe humanity is too volatile to allow into the galactic fold. And if they vote against us? Mira asked. Then your species will be quarantined. Her stomach turned, meaning, you will not be harmed, but no further contact. No travel beyond your system. Your signal will be dampened. Your legacy erased. Mira stared at the creature. That's not judgment. That's exile. It is mercy, Ithkal said. No, Mira whispered, a fire lighting in her chest. It's fear. The two stood facing each other. Alien and human, ancient and young. Two species born of different stars, now circling the same truth. You said others have started to watch us, Mira said. To wonder. She leaned forward. Then maybe it's time you asked a question. Ithkal tilted its tendrils slightly. What question? And Mira, voice steady and defiant, said, what if you're the ones who need to change? Okay, so I'm really trying to push myself with this writing. Like I want it to be good, you know? So let me know what you guys think. Is it working? A billion tiny pinpricks of light faded into a single star. The North Star. The void between the stars was cold, but not as cold as the emptiness inside him. He felt it again, that tugging sensation, and he pressed the heel of his palm against the smooth metal of the command deck. It was there, beneath the thrumming engines and the hum of artificial gravity, that feeling of falling. It pulled at him, insistent. It had been doing so for weeks. At first, it was a whisper. Now, it was a shout. Then there it was again, that familiar vision. This time, clearer, closer. A face. His face. He saw himself from above, saw the dark shape of his head against the light streaming through the viewport behind him. He was staring out into the infinite expanse of space, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. It was a face etched with grief, a grief so profound it threatened to consume him. His captain, ever stoic, ever strong, broken. The thought echoed in the vast emptiness of the ship, bouncing off the steel walls of his heart. Where did that come from? What was this weakness? Had he finally lost it? His grip tightened on the deck until his knuckles went white. Would his crew see it? Would they see him like that? If they did, they wouldn't mutiny. Not yet. But their loyalty, hard-won and carefully cultivated, might just crack. The ship lurched violently, throwing him off balance. Whatever it was, whatever he was feeling, it was reaching out, touching him, wrapping its icy fingers around his throat. He gasped for air, his vision tunneling, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The tremors subsided, the lights flickered back on. Silence descended once more, broken only by the hiss of the ship's life support. Was he truly losing his mind? Was this the legacy of his mission to return home broken, defeated? Or was it something else? He looked out at the unending darkness beyond the viewport. So much of space seemed to mock him, endless and uncaring. But he saw something in the depths, something that pricked at his awareness like a shard of glass. A glint of light, a flicker of movement. There, just beyond the reach of his vision, something stirred. Hope, fragile as a butterfly, fluttered in his chest. Perhaps it wasn't weakness he was feeling, but grief. Grief for all he had lost, for all he had taken, for all he had left behind. He straightened his shoulders, drew a shaky breath, and reached out a hand to steady himself. His fingers curled into fists, then relaxed. He was a soldier, a survivor, a leader. He would carry this burden, this grief, until the end. For himself, for his crew, for humanity. He turned from the viewport, his jaw set, his eyes filled with a cold fire. His mission wasn't over. Not by a long shot. He had found the source. Now he had to find a way to destroy it. As the ship fell, he made his way to the bridge, each step echoing his determination. He would stop at nothing to protect what was left of his world. He would destroy the architect, even if it meant destroying himself. With a final shudder, the ship hurtled towards its doom, leaving behind the graveyard of stars, hurtling towards a new dawn. Myra stumbled out of the transport sphere. The event horizon of the convocation was not a place, it was a presence. The room effect ended abruptly, leaving her weightless in a space without walls, without ceiling, without sky. There was only an infinite field of consciousness. Around her were creatures from across the galaxy, each suspended in a shared mental construct that bent space, time, and reason. The aliens and their ships filled her vision, distorted by their own senses and perceptions, but there was nothing else around her. As she drifted, or floated, or stood, she couldn't be sure. She saw a myriad of alien minds, some shaped like suns wrapped in code, others like threads of thought woven into geometry. There were no bodies, only presences. And then, above it all, a great translucent structure, the thought engine, pulsated like a living thing, older than most stars. It had no mouth, yet it spoke. It had no eyes, yet it watched. It did not speak with sound, but with consensus. A single voice boomed directly into her mind, not angry, but impossibly vast. You are human. You have been called. Mira swallowed past the lump in her throat. Yes. Your kind has fractured the probability matrix. You deviate from the pattern of rational evolution. Explain. She didn't flinch. We are irrational, she said. And that's exactly why we matter. A silence rolled through the convocation. It was not absence, but complete and utter attention. You calculate everything, Mira said, her voice clear and strong. You've optimized life, removed variables, perfected logic. But in doing that, you've forgotten something crucial. Life isn't just about continuing. It's about meaning. Another voice now entered the mind, melded older, slower, deeper. Perhaps this was Ithkal's own species. Meaning is chaos. Meaning is variable. Meaning leads to division. Myra took a step forward, even though she knew there was no floor beneath her feet. Meaning also leads to courage, to art, to healing, to sacrifice. You say we are dangerous, and maybe we are. But you've watched us, and you saw something you needed. Something you'd lost. The field around them rippled as memories began to pulse in the thought engine. Images of humans from across the galaxy and time flickered through her mind. A woman cradling her dying child, tears streaming down her face. A soldier shielding strangers with his body, a smile on his lips. A scientist laughing in joy at a failed experiment that led to discovery. A poet whispering verses at a grave. Pain, love, beauty, illogic, and choice. One by one, the other species watching her began to stir, their minds echoing with recognition and emotion. Ithkal's voice now echoed more resonant than before. She speaks truth. Others argued, hundreds of alien voices, some vibrating with emotion, others with sterile logic. Some demanded erasure, others called for study. But more than before, began to wonder. It was enough. Mira pushed on, the final yards, the final push. You said we break the pattern, but maybe the pattern needs breaking. You locked yourselves into survival. And in the process, you forgot how to live. A long pause stretched, then the thought engine thrummed once. A soundless pulse of decision. Consensus formed. The silence that followed was agonizing. Then came the verdict. Humanity will not be quarantined. Relief flooded Mira, and she nearly collapsed in the sudden rush of emotion. But the voice wasn't finished. Humanity will be invited. The mental landscape around them flared. Every mind reaching out. Every ship lighting up. Every being sending out probes and feelers. Shock. Agreement. Disagreement. Curiosity. Hope. After a span of millennia, the galaxy was about to change. Not by force, but by a question.